People can tell when a comic book movie is doing something special, often through the application of world building combined to competent, discernibly above average directing. You're creating an aesthetic and people notice the effort, more or less subconsciously. They noticed it when they brought back the Goth and Gotham, and they felt it with Spider-Verse long before it started a movement. Imagine using Retrofuturism to do the same. Loving Brad Bird doesn't make me a retrofuturist expert, but I know and enjoy it enough to appreciate its application here on Superman, a good occasion to channel that on a respectable budget. It got added to the assignment when you said you were taking inspo from the Silver Age. Think making a period piece without making a period piece, using design to communicate being aware that the source material took shape and thrived at a time when comic book elements now deemed old-fashioned were done in full earnest because they had no shame. Neither does James, promising not to reduce the brand to dragging and dropping Superman, the character, in some other elevated yet still interchangeable municipality labeled Metropolis, and downplaying the rest of his iconography for modernity's sake. God forbid you embrace the epoch from which the material came from and the aesthetic once attached to it. They got the memo next door. What if Gotham was just Chicago with added sugar? Wally Pfister's lens carried that trilogy's atmosphere on its back, but imagine doing both. Imagine pairing high-tier direction with a not-so-grounded aesthetic like they did in 2022. Imagine doing that for Superman. When talking about a film's look, I try my best not to use words like aura to talk about good cinematography because I think terms akin to it were given an aesthetically limited definition, often associated to a very specific look, which is a shame because aura farming became one of my favorite Gen Z terms. You can have it. I'll just say vibes. Good cinematography is good cinematography, and that's not always gonna look one way. I'd almost wish that the Nolanverse downright sucked for how badly the wrong lessons were taken from its success, nearly ruining the subgenre if not for just enough tonal and aesthetic variety keeping it afloat from drowning into complete austerity. Guess who's partly to thank for that? The tides are turning back and now there's a robot wearing a cape looking like a 50s Chevy. Teal, the color of the future. This is actively distancing itself from reality, devoting itself to a retrofuturist approach, most obvious through its depiction of Kryptonian technology. Take the drones by example. Alien by definition, but their physical mechanics might as well have been designed by humans from a future imagined back when people's biggest fear was getting Manhattan projected. Those curves really scream optimism and technological aspiration, don't they? I feel like those early Krypton interpretations were initially more utopia-coded rather than alien in its design, and James just followed through combining sleekness to his nonsensical escapist sensibilities. I'm talking about giving your drone a mechanism simulating blinking for no reason, or a flashing light for a speaking mouth. I'd say James is known to carry a varied yet consistent enough tone to permit the slight sacrifice of realism to add a bit of sunshine in our dour short lives. Love how they turned the cliché stiff robot movements into an artistic decision. C-3PO School of Robot Acting. Retrofuturism. Imaginativeness over practicality. To fantasize. Is that a crime? None of it makes sense and I'm glad it doesn't because I love fiction. Science fiction above all. Don't you hate it when you try to strike up a conversation with your automated caretaker and the thing actively denies its sentience? James is better than me because I'd have done the cowardly thing of modernizing/overdesigning them beyond recognition, stripping them of any sort of pulpy charm, begging people who couldn't care less about comic books to see how cool I find them to be, as if to meet them on their terms rather than have them come to comic books for their innate qualities. Being a visionary means showing people what they never knew they wanted. It's knowing better than us. It's being so acquainted with beauty that it allows one to recreate it even through the nonsensical. The kitsch. It's doing the simple things like using a Park Lane inspired font to channel Fleischer as intended. It all looks just so right, as if every element, the panels, this awesome UI monitoring device, this zany computer, were all designed in consideration for each other. Gunn's never missing out on a chance to profess his youthful love for sci-fi tech, from vehicular to medical. Here, it's the light traveling through the medbed cushions as it does a body scan, the sunray enhancer evoking a giant magnifying glass, the whole fortress really. This is what I meant when I said I expected the suit to look best within the confines of the chosen Kryptonian aesthetic, guaranteed to me by that consistent and discernible Gunn-Braham legacy effects texture lighting synergy. The cinematography is just mimicking that optimistic sentiment to complete the picture, disappearing my problems whenever I peer into this shot, or that shot. Life is good. And yet all this clean, tangible interior and exterior displays of craft and expertise, dragging your ever so talented crew across the tundra to achieve it, only to be told it looks like AI because you chose to show color, because it actively rejects reality, hence the brightness, the saturation, the sleekness, just to be pulled under the unreasonably large umbrella for which people use the term AI, unable to tell the difference between something that intentionally aims at creating a heightened reality versus the failed attempts at recreating it, regardless of the amount of depth and practicality given to the fantasy. James and crew didn't create a hyper-reality for it to be associated with the slop Facebook farms for engagement for choosing to be aesthetically faithful to the material he's adapting, all while having the stylistic confidence to create something new and fun and appealing in a unique way, by altering reality to channel optimism through the lens and the design it captures. Never thought I'd call a Superman movie aesthetically queer for using color in a manner that diverges from the norms of the times. I don't know, people are calling it woke. Could be in response to this more vulnerable, softer portrayal of masculinity, one not as stoic and immovable, a dorkier one. Reminds me of someone. That's why I tend to side with a project that divides people, often a glaring sign of something different being attempted, regardless of how good a study case of what AI can't do whatever scene consists of, showcasing the many details and pleasant imperfection of practical on-location filmmaking, such as the slight focal fix on a close-up, or everything having to do with what you can and can't control. Sky patterns, weather conditions. I don't care about the sky going from cloudy to clear from shot to shot, as I regard it as further proof of real filmmaking and its visible limitations. Filmmaking is a collection of minute yet important detail that those who often resort to AI lack the care to find or appreciate, actively denying themselves of the happy little accidents found along the way. I laugh looking at the retrofuturist gold and imagining some fraud trying to create something as aesthetically appealing, let alone coherent for a single scene. Unless you don't care about all that, which you should, good luck coding your set to look the same from shot to shot, for it not to collapse onto itself as the AI unsuccessfully holds the set excuse for an illusion together like a heavy handful of dirty laundry. I enjoy looking at a shot and being able to tell that the set's a walkable, interactable thing built and designed by the best of the best. You can't prompt your way through the tangible beauty of cinema. You'll get tendinitis before you get your first half-decent looking shot. Before you get the reflections on the shiny robots to match for a little more than 2 frames. Before you get the sunray enhancer to barely move right. You know, I wouldn't be going off about AI if ChatGPT weren't ruining my social media timeline daily, or the term itself losing its meaning being used where I don't think it should. Etching a scene onto my brain like Cybertronian projections through obsessive repetition is a job I passionately take on to help others better see what writing a prompt will never get you, either due to the tool's limitations or the uninspired minds that resort to it. Sorry about the tangent, had a rough weekend. Witnessing people associating a more fantastical take on the fiction of all fiction to AI, regardless of how appropriate said direction might be for the project at hand, made me stare into the abyss. The retrofuturist, optimistic, vintage, wide-eyed lens applied to this is one of the many major moves that will allow this one to better stand on its own amongst the 3 other cinematic iterations, something for which it earns by automatic respect. It's also why the score amongst the rest grinds my gears. Using the Williams theme reads to me as manipulative and clashes with the originality brought in by every other department. It worked in Returns, being the implied continuation of that canon, a homage through and through, but this is different. Sharing first names with a composer isn't a hall pass not to create a melodic identity of your own, a challenge I'd hope to hear John Murphy tackle head on. I'm not showing up to a falsely advertised punk rock Superman. Make something new and awesome like Hans did before you. Hopefully we're just getting finessed and they're just saving the actual score for the final film. Seems like I'm the minority on this one. So people don't exactly conflate the qualities of the Guardians movies and the ones most would believe to make a modern Superman work, but to the horror of many, people are recognizing James's style, his idiosyncrasies, the brightness, the color, the kitsch, the dog, and are basically attacking all the things synonymous to classic Superman as a fear response. Context and narrative is often what it takes to better make sense of whatever hyper-reality, gothic, campy, or even grounded if that's the chosen route, so maybe more credit should be given to the script for Batman 89 not being remembered as an overindulgent stylistic exercise. Maybe this film being as good if not better than Gunn's recent work could help sway the skeptics and bring them to better see the appeal in Superman's more quote-unquote dated attributes brought to film. I've been made aware of the persuasive power that emotional resonance and a strong narrative can have in bringing a viewer to reevaluate his initial feelings about a film's aesthetic choices. I remember not being keen on the looks of The Suicide Squad and Guardians Volume 3 or even Peacemaker. Now they're all gems of this modern era of comic book media in my books. Seems like James knows what's right and that sometimes requires a return to form. It was time. Coulson said it best.
People might just need a little old-fashioned.
I'm here for that. See you in a better tomorrow.